It's Tuesday, January 30. This is the news on PBCJ. I'm Simone Absalom. The House of Representatives is expected to extend the state of public emergency in St. James when it meets at Gordon House today. The first 14 days of the current state of public emergency in St. James expires on Thursday. This means that in addition to the debate in the House of Representatives today, the Senate will have to meet by Thursday if it is to approve an extension of the state of emergency, which would begin right after midnight Thursday. This will depend on the House of Representatives' approval of the extension, which will be piloted today by the Prime Minister, Mr. Andrew Holness. The emergency went into effect on January 18 by way of a proclamation issued by Governor General Sir Patrick Allen. In announcing the declaration of the state of emergency at Jamaica House on January 18, Prime Minister Andrew Holness noted that crime and violence in particular have been escalating in the parish of St. James, which had 335 homicides last year. The Police Service Commission, PSC, is being criticized for the hiring and now retiring of Police Commissioner George Quaylo in less than a year. The PSC announced on the weekend that Commissioner Quaylo is to demit office this Wednesday after just 9 months on the job. This has raised eyebrows both in the private sector and civil society regarding the attrition rate of police commissioners. Since 2007, the average tenure of a police commissioner has been just over 2 years. Commissioner Quaylo will hold the office for the shortest period in the last decade, at just 9 months. Upon the selection of his replacement, the country will have had 3 police commissioners in as many years. This has left the private sector organization President Howard Mitchell curious about the selection process being used. Mr. Mitchell told Nationwide News that the PSC's process must be reviewed for any deficiencies that has caused the rapid turnover. He says the PSC must look further afield for a possible replacement. Members of the judiciary on Friday hailed outgoing Chief Justice Zayla McCalla for her more than 40 years of service in the justice system in a ceremony marked by glowing tributes, all with a common denominator: that she is a stalwart who served the legal profession with distinction and will leave large shoes to fill. The ceremony, organized and facilitated by the Jamaica Association of Women Judges and the Canadian High Commission, was held at Terra Nova All Suite Hotel in Kingston. Puny Judge and Assistant Secretary of the JAWJ, Justice Carol Edwards, who presented Justice McCalla with a citation, described her as a staunch human rights, women's and children's rights advocate. Justice McCalla, in her reply, said she was overwhelmed by the many kind words. Justice McCalla said, quote, "It has exceeded my expectations, and I am greatly inspired by the commitment, dedication, and hard work of judges and court staff. You are the ones who have inspired me to make contributions in respect of the advancement of justice in our country." End quote. The JAWJ, which is in its first year, used the opportunity to launch its website and introduce its first patron, retired senior puny judge Justice Gloria Smith. The project the JAWJ will undertake includes work with women and girls in detention through the Correctional Service and work with Women's Center of Jamaica Foundation, We Inspire Women, Young Women Christian Association, and the Child Protection and Family Services Agency. Members of the Senate also had good words for the outgoing Chief Justice Zayla McCalla. 2 Jamaicans, entrepreneur Michael Lee Chin and international renowned pediatrician Dr. Upton Allen, are among 23 individuals who are being invested with the Order of Ontario, the Canadian province's highest honor. The announcement was made yesterday by Lieutenant Governor of Ontario and Chancellor of the Order of Ontario, who will bestow the honor to the newest appointees during an investiture ceremony at Queen's Park on February 27, 2018. According to the Ontario Ministry of Citizenship and Immigration, appointments to the order are made on the recommendation of any independent advisory council based on public nominations. Any Ontarian who has shown outstanding qualities of individual excellence and achievement in any field, leaving a lasting legacy in the province, in Canada and beyond, is eligible to be nominated for the order.
The Unity Labour Party government of Dr. Ralph Gonsalves, which has a one-seat majority in Parliament, will face an opposition-filed no-confidence motion on Wednesday. The motion was filed on Monday, moments before opposition MPs walked out of Parliament to protest Finance Minister Camilo Gonsalves' continued silence on an alleged extramarital affair with 23-year-old former model Yugi Farrell, who has been charged with cursing his wife. In the motion, the opposition legislators contend that the Gonsalves government has been failing the people miserably in providing a satisfactory quality of life. They also say the government's priorities in its use of taxpayers' money have produced totally inadequate health services and basic maintenance of roads. The motion also states that the collapse of the economy has deprived youth of hope and employment opportunities, and there is a climate of fear through intimidation at all levels of society. But Prime Minister Gonsalves is confident that his administration will defeat the motion. He says he does not plan to run from the debate and is sure the 8 members on his side all have confidence in the government. There are 7 opposition New Democratic Party MPs in Parliament. The head of the Caribbean Development Research Services, Peter Wickham, is predicting a victory for Grenada's ruling New National Party, the NNP, in the March 13 general election. The respected regional pollster says the main opposition National Democratic Congress, the NDC, which failed to win any of the 15 seats in the 2013 poll, may find it difficult, if not impossible, to overturn such a huge deficit.
NP is in pole position, and when you come from a situation where you have all these seats, it puts you in pole position to win the next election. But I think the NNP's challenge now is it has to really be very careful about voter motivation. In a situation like this, NDC supporters will vote. They will be motivated to vote because they're coming out to help the party do as well as possible. The NNP supporters are a mix of people, however. There are some NNP loyalists, the core, which will always support you. But there are others who are perhaps not necessarily NNP-ites to speak of, but are people who are, undecided voters, people who are going with Mitchell because they think he's the better option, people who may have been less enthusiastic voters. Now, if these people decide that they're not going to go to vote for 2 reasons, one, that they think their election is already won, which is not, or alternatively, 2, they feel that, you could as well give the opposition a seat or 2. It can start an avalanche that can lead to a Trump situation.
Wickham says during the campaign a lot of things could happen, and he says the ruling party has to be on its guard against the perception that it has already won. He recalled the situation in Barbados 5 years ago, where the opinion polls had predicted a victory for the main opposition Barbados Labour Party, only for the incumbent Democratic Labour Party to win by a 2-seat margin. He said the situation was also similar in the United States.
The role of the uncertain voter, the role of the person who is not going to jump up and down in a green T-shirt is something about which Dr. Mitchell ought to be concerned. And I think that those are the people who can very well, if he is not careful, they can bite him in the nose. You're looking at legacy. Really, this is what this election is about. This election is about legacy. And I've seen a lot of that in his actions and his machinations. And perhaps this idea of reaching out and building this bridge, or continuing to build this bridge to the Maurice Bishop sympathizers is a final, part of his whole campaign towards, building bridges.
Newly installed Bishop of the Catholic Church in Grenada has instructed clergy members not to appear on political platforms to deliver opening prayers during the season of campaigning ahead of the March 13 general election. Bishop Clyde Harvey urged citizens to refrain from allowing the political campaign to degenerate into a season of mudslinging and character assassination. He said the church regards character assassination as a form of murder and against the 5th commandment. He added that according to the teachings of the church, its leaders should not directly involve themselves in parties and politics by seeking to be candidates for political parties or by urging church members to vote for any particular party. He called on church members church leaders and members to respect the political choices of citizens. This is the first time in the history of political campaigning in Grenada that the Catholic Church has issued such a statement. A British legislator is calling on the Bermuda government to withdraw legislation banning same-sex marriages. Opposition Labour parliamentarian Chris Bryant made the call even as Minister of State for Europe and the Americas Sir Alan Duncan said that although the United Kingdom was disappointed, the overseas territory is backtracking on marriage equality. The legislation represents progress when compared to a year ago. The two expressed their views during a House of Commons adjournment debate on Bermuda's 2017 Domestic Partnership Act, which was passed last month. The legislation is designed to replace same-sex marriage, which was approved by a judge last year, with civil partnerships. Although approved by Parliament, it has yet to get the assent of Governor John Rankin, who is taking legal advice on the legislation and its constitutional implications. Bryant suggested that Governor Rankin has a right not to sign the bill into law according to the Bermuda Constitution.
The Governor has very good cause not to grant royal assent. Since Section 12 of the Constitution expressly guarantees freedom from discrimination, and the Bermudian Human Rights Act of 1981 also expressly prohibits discrimination on the grounds of sexual orientation in at least 7 different points. And to the Premier of Bermuda, I hope you change your mind. I hope Bermuda changes its mind, and I hope the government doesn't sign this legislation into law.
Although saying Britain was not happy with Bermuda's decision, Sir Alan, speaking on behalf of British Foreign Secretary Boris Johnson, said the UK should respect the island's democratic process.
But there are 3 important points that I would urge the House and the honourable member moving the debate tonight to bear in mind. The first is that if the bill receives assent, it does ensure that Bermudians who have been legally married in Bermuda since the Supreme Court decision will retain their marriage status, and they will enjoy the same legal rights as those in domestic partnerships, putting this on a clear statutory footing, of course. And so I move to my second point, which is that the European Court of Human Rights has consistently held that there is not yet a right to same-sex marriage, but there is a requirement to provide some legal recognition of same-sex relationships. And the final point worth bearing in mind is that less than a year ago, same-sex couples had no legal recognition at all under Bermudian law. Now they have the equivalent of recognition through civil partnership if this bill goes through. And while I not wish to do anything but express regret over the backward step from the Supreme Court ruling, we should acknowledge that this domestic partnership bill does represent progress in comparison to the situation just a year ago.
The border controversy between Guyana and Venezuela will be referred to the International Court of Justice. The decision was made by the United Nations Secretary General Antonio Guterres after his personal representative failed to resolve the controversy over the 1899 Arbitral Tribunal award that settled the boundary between Venezuela and then British Guyana. The UN Secretary General, who had promised to refer the matter to the ICJ if he determined that no significant progress had been made to resolve the issue during the period of discussion. In a statement issued Tuesday, the Foreign Affairs Minister said Guyana has always held the view that the ICJ is the appropriate forum for the peaceful and definitive settlement of the controversy. And the country is pleased that that view has prevailed under the process developed by both Secretary General Ban Ki-moon and Secretary General Antonio Guterres. According to the ministry, Guyana will not allow factors extraneous to the controversy to influence its referral to the court, but it will continue the advancement of peaceful relations with Venezuela, whose people are the brothers and sisters of the Guyanese people. It says that in this context, Guyana acknowledges the Secretary General's suggestions for the immediate future. President David Granger said repeatedly that he believes the jurisdiction come from regional economist Marla Dukaran, who has warned that the decline is putting even more pressure on the island's prized exchange rate of 2 Barbados dollars to $1 US. Dukaran is reporting that the international reserves fell to an all-time low of $482 million, or just under 8 weeks of import cover, as it That's as at November last year. She says this is the lowest level of foreign reserves in the last 17 years. And she said it was due to, in part, to government's continued reliance on the central bank to finance its operations. There have been mounting calls from worried economists and political pundits, as well as business community, for the Freundel-Stewart administration to curb its spending and take urgent steps to shore up the reserves and return the economy to sustainable growth. The reserves have been on a downward trajectory, with government facing a high import bill, a massive debt of just over 100% of gross domestic product, and a worrying deficit of about 6% last year. Trinidad and Tobago's President-elect Paula May Weeks says dealing with matters within the judiciary will be a top priority when she assumes office in March. Youth and crime will also be high on her list of focus areas. Sherilyn Lewis of C News has this report.
Tough Talk as President-designate Paula May Weeks said dealing with issues arising out of the judiciary is a top priority for her, and for now she will not intervene in any existing matters but commits to dealing with any that comes up during her tenure. She was speaking with the media after she received her appointment of election instruments on Monday.
I will be, like every member of the public, looking at it, usually with help from the media. Looking into it, it's not a matter for me until certain constitutional provisions are invoked. At that time, it becomes a matter on my plate, and I will deal with that if and when it becomes so.
Another priority for our President-designate is the issue of crime and the future of our nation's youth.
I'm concerned, like every citizen, with crime. A particular interest, I suppose, because all my career I have spent in the criminal law. I cannot fail but to be concerned with young persons and what positions they are going to occupy in this, our developing society. So I think, to start off, leaving room for anything else that may step into the spotlight, I think youth and crime are my immediate concerns.
And ask what she intends to bring to the table, Justice Weeks said,
my eventual answer is a set of cutlery to deal with matters on my plate, a basket full of the fruit of the Spirit, and grace before meals.
The President-elect will officially become President of the Republic in March this year, when the present President Anthony Carmona's term comes to an end.
Staying in Trinidad and Tobago, the Police Service Commission's controversial pick for top cop Deodath Dulchan has found himself in a controversy over alleged land grabbing, but he is adamant that all his actions in obtaining close to 2 acres of land close to where he lives were above board. The Deputy Police Commissioner also denies that he used intimidation to displace at least 4 farmers who were occupying the lands for 14 years. Mark Basant of TV6 News has that story.
Deputy Commissioner of Police for Operations Deodath Dulchan is denying claims that he used strong-arm tactics to drive farmers off this land in Chattery Extension in Felicity, which he now occupies, that they had been cultivating crops on for more than 14 years. 4 farmers were affected. They are Bola Ramdas, Dindyal Tubani, Satish Maraj and Selvin Mahabir, who wrote to the Commissioner of State Lands raising concerns in August last year. It got them nowhere, as Dulchan obtained approval in September last year from the Commissioner of State Lands, signed off by Deputy Commissioner Sicharan for Commissioner Paula Drakes to occupy the 2 acres of land. In a report later forwarded to the Minister of Agriculture done by the County Caroni Extension Office, the farmers said they had occupied specific plots for 14 years before they claimed Dulchan brush-cut the land. Although reports showed that the land in question had been occupied by 4 farmers, Dulchan claimed no one was on the land and he followed procedure. He said, quote, "At that time when I made that application, no one was on that land. The land was overgrown with bushes and I could not go and squat on land like other people would have been doing it because squatting is against the law. I sent a proposal to the Commissioner of State Lands and they acceded to my proposal and they grant me a portion of land. I have done nothing wrong." Dulchan also tried to dismiss an express report that he had manipulated the system by registering to become a farmer before he was granted approval by the Commissioner of State Lands to occupy the 2-acre plot. He says, the only time you could register to become a farmer is only after you have land. You can't go and tell them you want to be a farmer. They will ask you if you have land, any lease, and you tell them no. they will not give you a farmer's badge unless you can present to them a parcel of land that you could cultivate. Sources say that Dulal Chan's conduct, if found to be out of line in any part of this transaction, could amount to misbehavior in public office.
The Ministry of Health in Jamaica is being urged to investigate reports that criminals have been using embalming fluid as an inhalant before carrying out extremely violent crimes. President of the Jamaica Association of Certified Embalmers, Calvin Lynn, told RGR News he wants authorities to clamp down on accessibility to the dangerous chemical. There were media reports last week that criminals were getting high on embalming fluid and that influenced the brazen manner in which they carried out crimes. It is said they have been spraying the embalming fluid on marijuana or tobacco cigarettes, drying them and then smoking before committing murders. Lynn said importers and distributors are selling the substance without discretion, and he's disappointed that the Ministry of Health has not yet addressed the issue.
I believe that should the regulations be in place, that restrictions would be there to make the accessibility of embalming fluid, including formaldehyde, difficult. Because right now, as proper operators in the industry, when we are importing chemicals including embalming fluid, we have to get a permit from the Ministry of Health approved. The other side of it is that you have distributors, importers, who are selling the formaldehyde left, right, and center. I'm not saying where these killers got the embalming fluid from or the raw formaldehyde. There's a difference. But it's for the authorities to step in. And I'm disappointed to know that from Wednesday, I have not seen or heard anything from the Ministry of Health.